Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's poppin', Fantasy Channels? Happy Saturday.
What's going on?
For those of you who indulge in college football, enjoy your Saturday.
Yeah.
I do not do that.
I
tried for 2 weeks.
I feel like it would be easier if
Highlights.
we had a college team to root for.
What am I going to root for? BC, UMass?
Yeah. No, really.
Disgusting. I like Alabama.
Of course you do. You also like the Cowboys and the New England Patriots.
Shut up. Okay. I was born in New England. I was blessed with that team.
Okay, but you weren't born in Alabama or Dallas.
Dallas was not by choice.
I'm your rival because I always liked LSU.
Well, suck it
a little bit.
You know, I'll agree with you. I liked LSU too. I thought they got robbed.
Yeah.
Many times for the national championship back when they didn't do the play-in system.
Exactly.
But anyway.
They blow now, though.
Oh, yeah.
Right now,
DJ Ugle, I can't even say his freaking name.
It's a good thing about college football, though. You can blow for a year, and then the next year you're undefeated.
Check 1, 2. I thought I lost our audio system.
It's probably because we were talking about college football.
Yeah, that's definitely what happened. Anyway. All right, so welcome to Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as always. Today we're going to talk about some trade targets in the NFL, not in college football, and do our best in that department. Before we do that, check our website, fantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, FF Champs, Fantasy Champions. Type the name in, you'll find us. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcast platforms, leave a review, share this podcast with your friends, and then if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for noties, and then like and comment down below any questions you have about trades this week. You know, we'll grade your trade.
Yeah.
Grade your trade.
Your trade was an F. Go get it vetoed.
Blows, bro.
What are you doing?
Yeah. We'll do our best.
Yeah.
People send me trades and I'm like, wow, that's a bad trade for the other guy. A, what home league are you in and can I join?
That's legit. Anytime I talk to anyone about fantasy football, that's exactly my thoughts.
But I'm like,
our league used to stink. Our home league, 5 years ago, it was like garbage.
Yeah,
and now it's actually really good. One of the best I've seen.
I've never won, but I'll tell you this. Frick me. So there's that.
You got a shot this year, maybe.
I have a shot every year.
Yeah,
I can't close. I can't finish. Not a good closer.
Hey, you're like LeBron before he went to Miami.
So what you're saying is I got to build a super team and live in.
No, you need my help. I'll be D-Wade.
Okay, we'll joint. Coach,
we have a joint league, and look what's happening in that. We're probably going to be
running the table,
10-1. Yeah.
But anyway, so let's jump into our trade targets for Week 7. We'll start off with the number one guy, and he's back on this list. It shouldn't be a very long conversation, but it's Javonte Williams. And I put him on this list because I wanted to talk about him.
Yeah.
more specifically, he played on Thursday night.
He did.
And he was good. He's so good. I don't understand why they don't. It's clear that he is better than Melvin Gordon.
He was so good that he had 4 carries.
Yeah, I know. It's ridiculous. He had 4 good carries, 4 hella good carries. And then Melvin Gordon only had 8 carries, so it wasn't like he out-carried him a lot. But he had 18 yards on his 4 carries. So we had 4 carries for Javonte and 20 yards, and 18 yards for Melvin Gordon for double the carries. I don't know about you, but it's not good.
No, it's not.
But what I did notice in this game is Javonte was out there for a lot of pass catching downs. He had 6 catches in the game. So far on the season, he's had 3 catches, 3 catches, 3 catches, 3 catches, 6 catches. He's on pace for 48 catches on the year.
That's actually pretty good.
With half the work.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I like E.
Why was he used as like the receiving back this week though?
I don't know. And he really didn't get too much work in the first half. He had a couple of really good like snaps, but he didn't really get a whole ton of work. Mm-hmm. Later in the game, in the last 2 drives of the game, they put him out there for like a majority of the snaps.
Because they were losing in passing plays. But it's like, what took you that long?
I know. If he's a pass catching back, that's a good thing. But he ended with 14 fantasy points this week. So I don't know if that's a sign of the times or a sign of things to come, but that's the most fantasy points he's ever had against a tough run defense. I don't know. Is it time? Is it time? Is it time for Javonte to finally do this? I was reading an article and I saw him on a sell low or sell list.
Why?
Don't sell him. Golly, people.
See, I keep seeing this all over Twitter and a lot of the fantasy football people. They're like, Javonte is just not going to happen this year. We like Javonte going forward. Next year he's going to be a first or second round pick in redraft. Like, we love him going forward. We love him in dynasty, but he's not going to be a thing this year. And I don't really agree with that because people said the exact same thing though, and I keep going back to this, but J.K. Dobbins last year, it took him 10 weeks before he
got in. Yeah, if we get past 10, 12, 13 weeks, maybe we can start thinking about him not being
right.
Yeah,
but like, just you didn't draft Javonte Williams expecting him to be a top 10 running back. Yeah, by week 6, 7. Like that wasn't the goal. It was he's going to be
the guy
in the second half of the season, the back end of the season. He's going to be the guy. We both said the bye week in week 11 seems like a reasonable spot. I would like to hope it's earlier than that, but if he's still not the guy after the bye, then yeah, I mean, it's obviously probably not going to happen this year. But yeah, I mean, at the very least, it doesn't even have to be the guy, but just switch his touches, like with Melvin Gordon.
No, and I think
so. Like have Javonte be getting 60% of the work, and then Melvin getting 40%. I think that would even just be good enough for Javonte Williams to start every week as an RB2.
I think the thing in the conversation that needs to be had about Javonte Williams is the expectations of what people think he's going to do. And I think a lot of people think, a lot of people think that he's going to like all of a sudden take over this role and he's going to get 70, 80% of the work. And that Melvin Gordon's just going to be relegated to basically, the third string Royce Freeman role 3 years ago. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and that's not going to happen. And so once you accept that reality, if the role flips and Javonte is getting the pass catching work that he's been getting on top of getting like 10 carries a game, he's going to end up with 15, 16 touches. And at that point, with his efficiency and the way he plays, you're talking about 14 to 16 fantasy points per game, which is a very good high-end flex option. So I think the expectation of what we think he's going to be, he's highly tradable or trade for. Like you can, I was going to say trade forable, but that doesn't make sense. But you can trade for him and it won't cost you the boatload of, fantasy assets that it would to get another running back, like maybe a Josh Jacobs in the same tier. You know what I mean? So I feel like Javonte Williams is a good buy. He has that really easy schedule we keep talking about at the end of the season. And I think after the bye week, they're going to sit back and assess some things. And the other thing too is Melvin Gordon's an old man. He's always had games where he's gotten hurt. And I'm not saying he's going to get hurt and Javonte's going to come in and steal a job from him and never look back. I'm saying that down the second, in the second half of the season, down the stretch, in a 17-game season, a younger guy like Javonte Williams has a better shot of holding up than a guy like Melvin Gordon. And I think they're going to start handing the ball off. It's the same thing happened to Mark Ingram last year. Mark Ingram is an old man. And when you get to the second half of that season, he can't perform the same way he did early in the season. He just doesn't have the juice anymore. And I think Melvin Gordon's got a little bit more juice and a little more gas left in the tank as opposed to Mark Ingram. But I think that he's still older and he's still going to lose a little bit at the end of the year. And they're going to go with the young guy because the young guy's got all the, all this energy and lack of injury built up. for the second half of the season because he's younger. So I think that's what's going to happen with Javonte, and I think a lot of people giving up on him now are kind of morons.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, and we'll see how it goes. But I got hope for Javonte. I got hope.
I like hammering things. It's fun.
Kind of weird, but yeah. Okay.
But anyway, number 2 is Keenan Allen. Love myself some Keenan Allen. Traded Mike Williams for Keenan Allen. It's such a brick. I don't know why I did that. It was a dynasty league, which still doesn't make any sense. I don't know why I did that.
That actually kind of makes less sense because he's like 3 years younger.
Yeah, that is fair, but I do feel like Mike Williams is just like he's gonna like tear his ACL 2 straight years or something stupid like that. It's just Mike Williams things. So anyway, Keenan Allen is a buy for several reasons. I'll let Rick go over some more, but I was gonna bring up the injury situation. So Mike Williams has been dealing with somewhat of an injury. I can't remember if it was knee or shoulder. Can't remember, but anyway.
Yeah, I don't know.
Over the last couple weeks, though, he's been dealing with some form of an injury. And I kind of, after the 18-18 and 29 to start the season, I was kind of like at some point, this guy's got to come down to earth.
Right, yeah.
As Washington, Dallas, Kansas City on the season have been giving up fantasy points to the wide receivers position pretty handily. Mm-hmm. In the last couple weeks, you see Raiders, Baltimore, Cleveland. Cleveland has a good week. They give up a lot of fantasy points to the wide receiver position. Las Vegas, Baltimore been good against wide receivers. What did they do? 1-3 against Mike Williams. Obviously, this says he's on a... Okay, all right. I thought I was in the starts and sit show. My brain was just turning to mush. I was like, so anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's on a bye week this week, and then he has New England, Philly, Minnesota. All have been, good against the wide receiver position. And so it's like, when you look at Mike Williams, I think at some point, it shifted to him being the wide receiver one. I think NFL teams are shifting their number one corners over to that side. Keenan Allen's being left open in the slot, and Keenan's been getting the same target share. So there's one of two things that could happen. A, Mike Williams gets hurt because that's what Mike Williams does a majority of the time. And B, I just don't think that down the stretch of this, down the stretch here, he's going to be able to keep up this monstrous pace that he's been on as the wide receiver for this season. So I would definitely trade for Keenan Allen because of those things.
Yeah, I think the one you touched on pretty much everything, but the one thing I'll also mention that I think is important with Keenan Allen, is he only has 1 touchdown this year compared to Mike Williams, who has 6. I don't think that's going to continue. Keenan Allen's going to start putting up games where he gets touchdowns, and he's going to turn those 11, 12, 13-point weeks into 20-point weeks. And really show that he's still an elite wide receiver, because he's been okay anyway this year. Like he just hasn't put up any big games. Like his biggest game was 15 points. So he's hitting the floor in a lot of games. He's not going underneath it, but he just hasn't had any monster games. And once he starts scoring touchdowns, he will, and it'll be too late to acquire him. But you can get him as a cheap player right now.
Yeah, I agree. Number 3 is Dallas Goddard. Dallas has been good this year. This might take a buy high.
Well,
I know somebody in our league.
I wouldn't say he's been good.
That, yeah, you're right. Whoops. I thought he had like tight end 4 numbers or something like that. Nope.
I mean, the tight ends have been so bad. I think he probably was like a top 5 tight end after week 4 against the Chiefs. But yeah.
So he had a week, 12-point week, a 14-point week, and then 7, which I think is like mediocre for the tight end position. And then he had a bad week against San Fran, and then went out against Carolina, had a bad game. I think he missed most of that game because he got injured. And then
he did miss some of that game.
Say it again.
I believe he did miss some of that too, but still.
And then he missed the game against Tampa Bay. This week he's going up against the Raiders, and in the coming weeks and down the stretch, he has an easy schedule. I look at Goddard right now, and I feel like mainly the big reasons why he's on this list is because not really what he's done so far this year, which does make him a buy low candidate, but it's the fact that they just traded Zach Ertz. So Dallas Goddard's hurt, doesn't play. Zach Ertz goes out, has a relatively good game for them. And then the very next day they trade him away to the Arizona Cardinals.
Right.
And that's them doubling down on Dallas Goddard. And in an offense where, generally speaking, they have thrown it to the tight ends a lot, I feel like the numbers that like Zach Ertz was getting 5 to 6 targets per game. Dallas Goddard was getting 5 to 6 targets per game. If you combine those two totals, that might be 8 to 10 targets a game for this one guy. So I think Goddard's going to be a really, really heavily targeted like player. And I think it's going to be, it's going to take, after this trade, it's going to take a couple of games to, feel out how they're going to deal with one tight end on the field instead of the 12 personnel that they were running before. And I don't know if they continue running 12 personnel without the 2 tight ends, but now they can just feed Dallas Goddard instead of feeding both Ertz and Goddard. And so I think that's why it makes him a really good trade, guy. And you can go out to the team and probably get him for pretty cheap at the tight end position.
Yeah, this opens up a lot of stuff for Dallas Goddard. He hasn't been great this year, but he has been kind of sharing the targets with Zach Ertz, like you said. And with Ertz gone, that offense uses tight ends a lot. So you would expect him to get a lot of targets and play well. And he's got a pretty good schedule coming up as well. I think it's just a lot of good things. He hasn't played well anyway, so the person who owns Dallas Goddard is probably willing to trade him for a bag of sand at this point. So just get him cheap, put him on your bench. You might have to start him this week, depending on who your tight ends were, because there's a couple tight ends on buys. Get him cheap and watch him play at least decent. Like, I think without Ertz, the Eagles still kind of stink. So I don't know if he's capped off of being like, is he going to be a top 10 tight end? Will he be top 5? Like, where is he going to finish? I don't know, but he's going to be better than what he's been.
Right. And if you don't have
he's at least going to have more targets.
If you don't have a tight end at all, it's kind of a good buy because you have the ability to at least get somebody who is probably going to finish in the top 7.
Yep. Yeah, I agree.
And I think the other thing too that I was just looking up, Zach Ertz had 2 receiving touchdowns this year as well, in different games from when Dallas Goddard had his. So I think if you give 2 more touchdowns to Goddard, I think that changes some of his fantasy weeks from bad to good. And that's a lot. That's the case with a lot of tight ends, I think. But so I think Dallas Goddard in the second half of the season is definitely going to have a lot. And we're not even at that second half. We're still in the first. But I think he's going to have a really good second half of the season between the schedule and getting a lot more opportunity. It should be good. It should mean good things for Dallas Goddard. Hopefully he stays healthy. That's going to be the key.
Yeah. No, I'd agree.
All right, Rick, we got Calvin Ridley on this list, trade target for week 7. Tell me a little bit more about C-Rids.
Oh, I love this one because Calvin Ridley, a lot of people like yourself, even before the show, is like, oh, he hasn't been good this year. A lot of people think he's been a bust and everything like that, but he's been fine. He's kind of like what Stephon Diggs was. 7 points in the first week, which wasn't great, but he still had 8 targets.
Fantasy, bro.
No, but hold on, I'll get there. Then he had 15.8, 10, 11 in half PPR. So, like, he's been okay. Yeah. He's missed 2 games, and then they also had a bye. So he's missed 3 straight weeks. So it feels like he's been, like, struggling and out of it, but he's just been missing time. He's back this weekend against Miami. He only has 1 touchdown in the season. Like, this is Calvin Ridley we're talking about. That's going to go up. The last time we saw Calvin Ridley play, he had 13 targets. He's due for, I don't know if it's going to happen this week or next week or what, but he's due for a game where he just gets 20 fantasy points.
Yeah.
He's a good buy low candidate because hasn't performed like a top wide receiver, yet he still is one.
Yeah, I agree. And like Rick said before the show, like, obviously I knew about his, excused absence. Is that what we want to call it?
Sure.
But against the Jets, and then he had a bye week in week 6. So it's like, he hasn't been really around for 2 weeks for people to even be like, okay. And the manager of the guy or the owner of the team that, has him on their team, he looks at Calvin Ridley going, okay, you haven't done anything for me for the last 2 weeks. And it's something where you can hop out and get a wide receiver if you need one. Like Rick said, he's been getting a heavy target share. The targets have not been great for Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan's starting to get old as dirt at this point. But yeah, no, I think for Calvin Ridley, he has the ability, especially when you look at, he played a tough Philly defense, and then he had Tampa, Washington, New York, had 11, 10, 15. and he's been putting up those numbers. Nothing's really changed for Ridley. He just missed a week and had a bye week, and it's starting to make everyone think he's just gone and disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the other thing that Rick brought up that was a really, really great point is the fact that Calvin Ridley he's only caught one touchdown on the year. And Calvin Ridley literally last season had 4 touchdowns in the first 2 weeks of the season last year. And he caught, I believe it was 10 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, he's only caught 1 this year, and he usually catches 10 to 12 touchdowns on a yearly basis. So that could either be the Falcons offense blowing, or that could be the fact that they just haven't gotten the ball to Ridley in the red zone enough, and that's something that they're going to switch, and Calvin Ridley ends up catching more. But I would think it's safe to say that there's going to be a positive regression in the touchdown category for Calvin Ridley as the season goes along.
Yeah, I could honestly see a game at some point this season where he gets like 13 targets, 10 catches, 130 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And then everybody's like, "Oh, Calvin Ridley, wide receiver 1." And we're going to be like, "Well,
back, baby." We're all like, well, we told you to trade for him before that happened. So.
Exactly.
But anyway, let's move on to the next guy, final guy, Chris Godwin. I wish we had more running backs, but they're all dead. So
yeah, running backs are dead.
So we're just going to tell you to trade for some wide. Maybe it's because I need wide receivers on all my teams.
So you're just looking at the wide receivers available.
I'm just looking at the wide receivers going on. This is good. So Chris Godwin had a tough stretch here in the last couple weeks. He had, at the beginning of the season, he was on fire. 19, 14, 16, had a really good start. And then he had 7, 10, and 6. And he just wasn't getting targeted the same as he was in the first month of the season. He wasn't getting targeted all that much by Brady. I don't get it. But I think in the coming weeks, you have Chicago, you have Washington, you have New York, you have Indianapolis, you have a bye week, obviously, and then, New Orleans. But I think he can have some really, really good games down that stretch. What scares me a little bit about Chris Godwin is the stretch of the season where you go from week 13 to 17, where the playoffs are happening and you're trying to get into the playoffs. A lot of tough matchups in that stretch. So, if anything, I trade for him now and then I trade him away later, after he has a couple of really good games and people start sweating. But either way, I think Chris Godwin's going to get back to it. I think he's going to have some good games down the stretch, and he's going to start catching more touchdowns, hopefully. Brady's been throwing so many touchdowns, and if he keeps on this pace, there's no way Chris Godwin stays out of that conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's for sure. I mean, Chris Godwin's due for a big game. He only had 5 targets this past week, too, against the Eagles. I think another big thing is Antonio Brown, who had 13 targets this past week, is out. So I think this is a week where we see Chris Godwin gets his 20 fantasy point week, and then nobody's going to want to trade for him. So if you want a receiver who is good and probably like a wide receiver 2 on someone's team, but you can get him cheaper now than you could, Chris Godwin's a perfect guy for that. He is due, like you said, the first 2 weeks of the season, he had 2 touchdowns. Since then, has not had a touchdown since. That's not going to happen. I mean, and I think this goes for all the Buccaneers receivers, but especially Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. Like, Brady just goes back and forth between those guys on week-to-week basis. Some weeks Mike Evans will get his 26 fantasy points, and then one week Chris Godwin will get his 20. So it's going to happen. They're both going to play well at some point. It just switches off on weeks, and right now Chris Godwin is the guy that's due. It's coming.
I agree. There you go. Trade targets for week 7. Get yourself a little bit of Javonte Williams, Keenan Allen, Dallas Goddard, Calvin Ridley, Chris Godwin. Get those guys on your team.
Yeah.
Easy to do. Hopefully you enjoy your Sunday. We'll enjoy ours. And good luck this weekend. Get a win.
Later.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.